So picture this. It is October of 1853, and a man named Ernesto Spagnoletti just stepped off a ship into the dusty, kind of chaotic, burgeoning colony of New South Wales, Australia.
Right, literally the other side of the world for him.
Exactly. And he was completely unknown in this territory, like absolute zero name recognition.
Just starting from scratch.
Yeah, starting from scratch. And almost immediately, he is struck down by this severe illness.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so his highly anticipated debut, he was supposed to play at this farewell concert for a local pianist. It was a documented disaster.
Like historically documented.
Yes, the local papers actually noted that he was indisposed, the whole program was disarranged, and frankly, he just looked like a complete failure before he even really began.
Wow, that is a rough start.
Right. But here is where it gets crazy. Within a matter of mere years, not only did Ernesto Spagnoletti completely dominate the cultural and musical landscape of elite Sydney society, but he essentially hardwired his exact musical genius into his children.
And his children's children, right?
Yeah. Yes. They became this unstoppable artistic dynasty. So the question we are asking today is, how does that actually happen? I mean, was it just sheer talent?
Or, good genetics.
Exactly. Or was it the activation of a highly specific generational technology?
Well, when you examine historical anomalies like the Spagnoletti dynasty, you quickly realize that standard explanations like talent or luck, they just fall completely short.
They don't cover it.
Not at all. What you are actually looking at is a meticulously protected, multi-generational architecture.
And that architecture is precisely the framework we are dissecting today on this deep dive.
Yes, it is. We are exploring the intellectual and philosophical blueprint of Sir Grand Star.
Specifically, we're focusing on the debut of the Stellar Ruby Edition LP Grand Lists, right?
Exactly. Which is this incredibly dense, elite academic synthesis of his most profound works.
I mean, we are talking about merging the cultural macro theory of the diaspora blueprint with the generational mapping of bloodline warfare.
And don't forget the systemic political critique of the Rings of Injustice.
Right, all of that integrated with his daily operational manuals, which are Life Beyond the Page and Decode Your Destiny.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to really understand how Sir Grand Star, operating as this hybrid transformational strategist, designs these frameworks to transform human identity.
And forge eternal legacies, which, is no small feat.
No, it requires a massive perspective shift. I mean, we really have to look at human potential not just as a singular lifetime, but as a continuum.
Right, like you are the product of centuries of decision.
And you are the architect of centuries to come.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you've ever had that nagging, persistent feeling that you're fighting a battle you didn't start.
Like your potential is somehow trapped.
Yeah, trapped behind invisible barriers, whether those are psychological, familial, or systemic. If that sounds like you, this is the conversation you need.
Absolutely. Because Sir Grand Star argues that before anyone can change the world or, build a Spagnoletti-level legacy, they have to rebuild their own internal infrastructure first.
Okay, let's unpack this. We find the blueprint for this internal rebuild, the diaspora blueprint, right?
We do. And the central thesis of that book operates on this really uncompromising mathematical formula.
Oh, the equation.
Yeah. It is self-esteem multiplied by confidence equals power.
Notice the operator there, folks. It is multiplication, not addition.
That is a crucial distinction. If either variable is at 0, the resulting power is 0.
Which makes sense mathematically, but Sir Grand Star meticulously separates these two concepts, right? Modern psychology kind of blurs them together.
It does, constantly. But he argues self-esteem is entirely internal. It is the fundamental belief that answers the statement, I am worthy.
Okay, and confidence.
Confidence, conversely, is external and strictly ability-based. It answers the statement, I am capable.
I want to test the mechanics of this formula for a second. Let's say someone has, off-the-charts confidence.
Okay.
They are highly skilled, they know they can execute a task flawlessly, but their internal self-esteem, their core belief in their own worthiness is fractured, near 0. Based on this multiplication, what does that actually produce in the real world? How does self-belief translate to actual global power?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it produces performative survival, not power.
Performative survival. Wow.
Yeah. In the formula, if self-esteem is fractional or negative, high confidence simply amplifies the internal fracture.
You see this all the time, right? Individuals who achieve massive external success.
Oh, constantly. Wealth, status, accolades. but they relentlessly self-sabotage.
Or they suffer from profound imposter syndrome.
Exactly. They are highly capable, but because they don't believe they are worthy of the territory they've conquered, they just cannot hold it.
So power, in Sir Grandstar's definition, is the sustainable capacity to declare, I will build.
Yes. And to reach that sustainable power, he argues an individual must reconstruct 6 distinct identities.
Okay, let's list them. There's personal, historical, social, spiritual, economic, and future.
Right. And the text makes a stark assertion about these 6 identities, specifically regarding the African diaspora.
Yeah, this part was heavy. Sir Grandstar argues that the identity crisis experienced across the diaspora is not organic.
Not at all. It wasn't some natural evolutionary drift.
He says it was a highly engineered, systemic stripping of narrative autonomy over centuries.
And that is the core conflict of the text. When a population loses narrative autonomy, the exclusive right to define its own origin and value, it immediately loses social mobility.
And economic leverage, right.
Precisely. Global power is inextricably linked to controlling your own historical narrative.
So the diaspora inherited deeply fractured versions of these 6 identities through colonization, the transatlantic slave trade,
Modern media misrepresentation, intentional educational neglect. The list goes on.
Okay, so how does an individual actually fix that? I mean, if my historical identity was intentionally corrupted by a system centuries before I was born, how do I apply a patch to that operating system today?
Sir Grandstar prescribes a methodology he calls historical corrective study.
Because you can't build confidence on an empty void.
Exactly. You have to bypass the truncated history taught in standard curricula. You have to reconnect directly with the architects, scholars, and empires of your specific lineage.
Right, so you study the economic structures of Mali.
Or the architectural mathematics of Nubia.
Yeah.
You internalize the reality that you descend from builders.
I love that. It completely changes the psychological baseline from I am trying to become something new to I am remembering who I already am.
That's beautifully put. And once that historical identity is anchored, the confidence you project isn't some fragile fake-it-till-you-make-it facade.
It's an inherited certainty.
Yes, and Sir Grandstar doesn't stop at the individual level either.
Yeah.
He scales this repaired identity globally.
Right. He outlines a strategy for turning the vast diversity of the diaspora into concentrated geopolitical and economic power.
He describes taking the deep-rooted cultural identity of Africans and fusing it with the highly competitive, barrier-breaking brilliance of African Americans.
And then integrating the profound resilience of Caribbeans, the cultural fluidity of Afro-Latinos.
And the systemic adaptability of Afro-Europeans. It is a massive call for aggressive cross-diaspora collaboration.
Because when you shift from internal division and suspicion to collaborative economic pooling, the scale of power just shifts dramatically.
It does.
Yeah.
You transition a global population from being the world's most reliable consumers into producers.
Then owners.
And ultimately, global competitors dictating market terms.
So if you're listening, you can probably do a quick diagnostic on yourself right now. Look at those 6 identities: personal, historical, social, spiritual, economic, future.
Right. Think about which one feels heavier or more resistant than the others.
Maybe it's the economic identity. Like you feel capable, but there is this persistent invisible ceiling on your financial growth.
Sir Grandstar suggests that ceiling isn't a lack of skill. It's a fracture in the identity that requires targeted healing.
And healing the individual and cultural identity inevitably forces you to confront the next layer of the architecture, doesn't it?
Yes, because you cannot heal in a vacuum. You exist within a specific family unit.
Which means you have inherited a specific set of spiritual and emotional variables.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second major framework in the Stellar Ruby edition, the Covenant Legacy, Bloodline Warfare.
We are zooming in from the macrocultural lens down to the microfamilial lens here.
We all understand biological inheritance from.
Yeah, you get your mother's height, your grandfather's eye color, maybe a genetic predisposition to heart disease.
But Sir Grandstar introduces this concept of spiritual inheritance. And he treats it with the exact same literal gravity as genetic inheritance.
That is wild to think about.
He says a bloodline carries 2 distinct spiritual cargoes across time. The first are blessings.
Which manifest as what? Innate favor, unearned gifts.
Yes, and specific generational purposes. But the second cargo are battles. These are repeating generational wounds, cyclical traumas, and what he defines as altars.
Okay, wait. What exactly does he mean by an altar in a modern context? Because I usually think of that as like a stone table in an ancient temple.
Right, it sounds very archaic. But in this framework, An altar is an invisible, historical agreement made by an ancestor.
An agreement that established a legal spiritual precedent for the bloodline.
Exactly. Is a recurring pattern of behavior or consequence that empowers either positive or destructive forces in your life today.
So you do not begin your life at a neutral zero.
Never. You step onto a battlefield where the trenches were dug centuries ago.
He draws a fascinating distinction between how a bloodline is viewed by opposing spiritual forces, too.
Yes, God in this theology views a bloodline as an inheritance.
Meaning, a family line is chosen to steward a specific assignment.
Right. A family might be uniquely assigned to generate massive wealth for philanthropy, or they might be assigned to artistic innovation.
Or political leadership.
Right.
But conversely, demonic or destructive forces view a bloodline purely as territory.
Territory to be occupied and maintained. If a negative influence can establish a foothold in one generation.
Like through a spirit of addiction or a mindset of extreme poverty.
Or cyclical domestic violence, right? The objective of that force is to maintain that occupied territory in the children and grandchildren.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I have to stop you because framing a bloodline as territory to be occupied by historical demonic influences, it feels really heavy, almost fatalistic.
It can definitely sound that way at first.
Yeah, like if I'm listening to this, I might be thinking, great, so I'm paying the cosmic tab for a terrible decision my great-grandfather made in 1920. I'm fighting his demons.
Right, you're wondering how this is empowering rather than just depressing.
Exactly. It's like a generational relay race, where the current runner is suddenly handed a baton covered in barbed wire.
That is a great analogy. But it is empowering because it removes the mystery of your struggle.
Okay, explain that.
So Grand Star frames the person who recognizes these patterns as the bloodline redeemer or the watchman.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know you are carrying your great-grandfather's debt, you will assume your financial failures are due to your own incompetence.
You will internalize the shame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But once you identify the inherited battle, you stop fighting yourself and start dismantling the specific altar.
So if you are the watchman he talks about, how do you know what specific battle your family is fighting? He provides diagnostic questions for this, right?
He does. You have to look for the historical anomalies in your family tree.
Like what struggles appear in multiple family members across completely different environments.
Right. Did your uncle, your mother, and your sister all hit the exact same bizarre career sabotage at age 35?
Wow.
Conversely, what gifts show up in the children without any formal training? If a child displays profound, untaught spiritual empathy or financial intuition.
That is a huge clue to the assignment.
Exactly. And here is the key principle. The attack always mirrors the assignment.
Always.
Always. The enemy attacks exactly what the bloodline is destined to release into the world.
So if a family is divinely assigned to leadership and unification, their primary generational battle will likely be what? Severe internal division.
Yes. Estrangement, chaos within the family. If they are called to wealth generation, they will fight an intense, seemingly illogical spirit of poverty and debt.
So the nature of your deepest, most persistent struggle is actually the exact blueprint of your family's greatest hidden gift.
It is. Which introduces the mechanic of the twofold blessing.
Right, because if you are the watchman, you aren't just surviving the attack. You are executing a two-part offensive strategy.
The first fold is divine assistance, where you align yourself so that spiritual forces move ahead of you to clear the path.
But the second fold is the ultimate goal, generational victory.
Generational victory is the moment the cycle terminates. You don't just manage the inherited addiction or poverty, you completely break the pattern.
So that the generation coming after you has literally no concept of that struggle. You reset the baseline.
Precisely. And to really grasp what a successfully protected bloodline assignment looks like in reality, we need to leave the realm of theory.
Yeah, we need a concrete example. Sir Grand Star refers to certain families holding worship lineages or operating on specific frequencies of the soul in his book, Your Music, My Song.
Empirical evidence is crucial here. It really demystifies the theology and shows the actual mechanics of generational transfer.
So let's go back to 1850s Australia and the Spagnoletti family we mentioned at the very start of the deep dive.
Right, the archives.
We dug through the digital archives of the Sydney Morning Herald and the Empire newspapers from 1853 to 1862. This family is the quintessential case study of a protected worship lineage.
The patriarch, Signor Ernesto Spagnoletti Sr., arrives in this rugged, chaotic penal colony.
And he is carrying a highly refined artistic frequency.
But he immediately faces resistance.
Yeah, the sudden illness, the disastrous debut concert at the Royal Hotel for Coleman Jacobs, it reads like textbook bloodline warfare.
An attempt to silence the frequency before it can take root in a new territory.
But observe how quickly he neutralizes that resistance. I mean, within months, by 1854, the archives show him performing these incredibly complex classical pieces.
He is singing Mozart arias like Non più andrai
Yeah.
at the Royal Polytechnic Institution.
He is sharing top billing with Madame Anna Bishop, who was one of the most globally renowned sopranos of the entire era.
He isn't just participating in the local culture. He is actively constructing a new cultural altar.
We even found records of him taking Mozart's Come Shining Forth, My Dearest, arranging it himself and publishing it in the Australian musical bouquet.
He is literally seeding the atmosphere of a penal colony with high-level harmonic frequency.
But the true manifestation of Sir Grandstar's theories isn't what Spagnoletti Sr. achieved, it's what he transferred.
The generational victory.
Exactly. Spagnoletti Sr. absorbed the friction of establishing the territory so his children wouldn't have to.
By 1857, we see the emergence of Ernesto Spagnoletti Jr. And Jr. isn't fighting to be heard. He is instantly prolific.
He's composing original works right out of the gate. He publishes the Balmain Polka, dedicating it to the local society ladies. He publishes the Nina Waltz.
He inherited the musical frequency, but he amplified the output.
And it expands even further to Miss Nina Spagnoletti. By 1859, she is headlining at Clark's Assembly Rooms.
The critics in the papers are fawning over her execution of ballads like Ever of Thee and Violet.
You have a father, a son, and a daughter, all operating seamlessly within the exact same frequency of the soul.
What is truly remarkable there is the absence of recorded struggle for the children.
Because if the assignment of this bloodline was to release art, harmony, and beauty, the corresponding attack would be obscurity, creative block, or discord.
But Spagnoletti Sr. fought the obscurity. He secured the perimeter.
He created an environment where his children could step effortlessly into their destiny.
It radically reframes the concept of spiritual warfare. It isn't just this defensive, fearful posture binding demons.
No, it is aggressively offensive. It is the active preservation and multiplication of beauty, art, influence, and architecture across decades.
They serve as historical proof. When a lineage identifies its assignment and protects its frequency, the legacy compounds.
I mean, we are sitting here analyzing a newspaper clipping from 1859, proving that their cultural resonance outlasted their physical lives by centuries.
It is incredible.
So let's say you've done the work, right? You've listened to the first half of this deep dive. You've healed your 6 identities. You've claimed your spiritual inheritance. And you're operating on that Spagnoletti frequency.
You are creating, you are building, you should be totally unstoppable.
But, and this is but Sir Grandstar points out a terrifying reality. Yeah. A healed individual hitting a corrupted system is still going to bleed.
Yes.
You can have perfect internal architecture, but if the external environment is rigged to crush you, you face a completely different kind of warfare.
That transitions us from the internal generational battles into the macro systemic battles,
which are outlined in the Rings of Injustice, America's secret seasons of judicial power.
Now, before we examine these rings, we need to frame this correctly for the listener.
Yes, absolutely. Listeners, please note, this specific text deals with highly charged, intensely political themes regarding the American judicial system. We are strictly examining Sir Grandstar's theoretical architecture to understand his ideas and the mechanics of his argument.
We are not taking a political stance, nor are we endorsing a left-wing or right-wing viewpoint on the justice system. We are strictly and impartially analyzing the text as it is written in the source material.
Right, and the text itself is unflinching. Sir Grandstar constructs a model of the American justice system not as a blind, neutral arbiter of truth, but as a shadow court.
He argues that in many instances, legal outcomes are dictated entirely by political alliances, financial incentives, and elite networks.
Completely divorced from actual justice. And he categorizes this corruption through a framework of 10 rings of injustice.
I think the best way to visualize these rings is not like jewelry, but like a series of pressurized submarine airlocks.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
If you manage to survive one level of the system, it simply locks you into the next, slowly bleeding off your resources and psychological endurance.
Let's look at the foundational airlock, the ring of invisible discretion.
Well, invisible discretion is honestly where the most profound damage occurs,
Right?
simply because it leaves absolutely no paper trail.
Right, so it's completely off the record.
Totally. We're talking about unrecorded
Yeah,
sidebars,
yeah.
hushed chamber meetings between judges and prosecutors.
Just subtle procedural rulings.
Right, rulings that technically comply with the law, sure, but they heavily tilt the playing field toward the insiders. Because there is no transcript of a wink or a nod, there is no mechanism for appeal.
Then you are forced into the ring of political favor. The text argues that election cycles and the necessity for judges or prosecutors to appear tough on crime dictate the severity of sentencing rather than the actual facts of the case.
And right next to that is the ring of wealth and access. This is the most transparent ring. It is the simple reality that capital buys a completely different tier of legal navigation.
But the mechanism that truly traps marginalized groups is the ring of cultural bias.
This is where identity, dialect, neighborhood, and societal assumptions function as a silent verdict before the jury is even seated. The evidence is filtered through a pre-existing cultural prejudice.
The ring that I found the most deeply unsettling, though, is what he calls the ring of prison economics.
The commodification of human life.
Yes. Sir Grandstar describes a system where the administration of justice is entirely supplanted by a profit-driven supply chain.
When prisons are privatized, or when municipalities rely on court fees for revenue, the gavel falls to meet inventory quotas.
Human beings are transformed from citizens into units of economic value required to maintain bed space and generate shareholder profit. It's chilling.
It is. And this entire operation is guarded by the ring of gatekeepers and cover-ups.
It's like an institutional immune system designed to protect the club. Complaints are buried in bureaucracy, internal investigations find no wrongdoing, and the shadow court operates in total darkness.
This is where the structural weight of the framework becomes incredibly oppressive.
Exactly. I've got to push back here, though. My question is about agency.
Okay.
If I am an average citizen, right, and I am looking at a system described as a massive interlocking dynasty of power guarded by institutional gatekeepers, it's like a rigged casino tournament where the referees are placing bets.
Right.
Why would I even try to fight? It sounds completely impenetrable. Doesn't this framework ultimately leave the citizen entirely helpless?
It would if the framework ended there. But Sir Grandstar introduces the countermeasures, the ring of accountability and the ring of reform.
Okay, so there is a way out.
Yes. He argues that the shadow courts possess a critical vulnerability. They require absolute silence to function.
So exposure is the key.
Exactly. The moment the mechanics of the unrecorded sidebar or the prison economic quota are exposed to the public square, the system begins to fracture.
What is the actual mechanism for the citizen to force that exposure, though?
He focuses intensely on dismantling what he calls the pro se trap. When an unrepresented citizen, a pro se litigant, attempts to navigate these airlocks alone, they're usually crushed by procedural technicalities, not by the merits of their actual case.
The psychological terror of the courtroom paralyzes them.
Precisely. So the solution is aggressive citizen education, knowledge as an offensive weapon.
He advocates for community oversight, coordinated whistleblowing, and legal literacy programs.
You have to demystify the procedures. When a critical mass of citizens understands exactly how the ring of invisible discretion operates, they can demand transparency.
Effectively replacing the rings of injustice with what he terms rings of integrity.
Because you cannot dismantle a system you do not understand, which is why naming the rings is the very first act of reform.
So if we pull back and look at the whole board for a second, we have identified the internal spiritual battles in our bloodlines, and we've mapped the external systemic traps of the shadow courts.
We are carrying heavy historical assignments in a world that is fundamentally hostile to our success.
Exactly. So how on earth does a person synthesize all of this overwhelming macro theory into, like, a functional Tuesday morning?
You must translate the theory into embodiment, because if you only possess the theory, you are just an educated observer of your own defeat.
Ouch. But true.
This brings us to the operational core of the Stellar Ruby edition, activating the Platinum Blueprint. This utilizes the manual's Life Beyond the Page, the Classic Touche edition, and Decode Your Destiny, the MVP Platinum Print edition.
Life Beyond the Page introduces the five-tiller doctrine for transformation. Sir Grandstar points out a really painful truth here.
The dopamine trap.
Yeah. Reading a self-help book releases dopamine, making you feel like you accomplished something when all you actually did was stockpile a dormant seed.
It's the illusion of progress.
To actually germinate that seed, you must move through 5 non-negotiable steps: capture, organize, act, reflect, and share.
The mechanics of these pillars are designed specifically to bypass procrastination. Capture demands immediate documentation of an insight. Organize forces you to categorize the chaos. But act is the absolute linchpin.
And to facilitate that action, Decode Your Destiny introduces tools that sound honestly highly complex: AI-powered numerology, DISC personality insights, and mini-Cosmo identity modeling.
Let's break down mini-Cosmo identity modeling because it sounds like esoteric jargon, but it's actually a highly practical psychological tool.
Okay, lay it out.
The mini-Cosmo is the concept of treating your immediate microenvironment, your 24-hour day, your physical workspace, your immediate conversations as a miniature cosmos that perfectly reflects your macro destiny.
Wait, so it's mapping those 6 identities we talked about earlier right onto my daily schedule.
Precisely. If your macro destiny is to build a massive economic empire, your mini-Cosmo model asks, does the way I spent the last hour reflect the mindset of an empire builder or just a consumer?
Wow. That's a mirror you can't hide from.
No, you can't. You use AI tools and personality frameworks to ruthlessly audit your daily habits, ensuring your micro-actions are perfectly aligned with your multi-generational assignment.
Which produces the ultimate tool in this section, the action map.
The action map is designed to obliterate the paralysis that occurs in the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
Because the human brain is easily overwhelmed by the scale of a multi-generational legacy. Like, if your goal is to dismantle systemic injustice, your brain will literally freeze.
The action map forces you to distill a massive objective into a microscopic, unavoidable first step.
The text provides this great case study of Maya. Maya has read hundreds of books, she understands all the theory, but she is completely paralyzed by anxiety and stagnation.
So her action map doesn't tell her to go start a Fortune 500 company.
No, it dictates one highly specific microaction. Spend exactly 10 minutes every single morning planning her day. That's it.
But look at the psychology of what those 10 minutes achieve. It isn't just a productivity hack. Those 10 minutes represent Maya reclaiming narrative autonomy over her mini-Cosmo.
She is no longer reacting to the world. She is dictating terms to her day.
Days turn into weeks. Compounding momentum occurs, her baseline anxiety drops because she is in control, and her entire life trajectory shifts.
Then there is Alex. He is terrified of the vulnerability required to share his ideas globally. His action map requires a single 200-word blog post, imperfect action.
The 200 words break the psychological barrier of perfectionism. Sir Grandstar is explicit about this. Imperfect action is the only trigger for transformation.
You don't need a flawless strategy. You need a microaction that initiates forward momentum. So what does this all mean for you listening? This philosophy is violently summarized in what Sir Grandstar calls his foundational declaration. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this deep dive, memorize this quote from the text. I do not exist to manage decline, optimize broken structures, or participate in small thinking dressed as caution. I operate at the level where systems are designed, not debated.
That is a breathtaking assertion of sovereignty.
It really is.
It forces the reader to stop viewing themselves as a victim of circumstances or a passive participant in a shadow court. You are a hybrid transformational strategist. You are the architect.
But, and this is a massive but, to sustain that level of ruthless execution, to build a Spagnoletti-level legacy while simultaneously fighting systemic rings of injustice, you are burning an incredible amount of energy.
If you are not protecting your internal power source, you will burn out before you ever reach generational victory.
Which brings us to the final, indispensable layer of the architecture: energetic sovereignty. This is synthesized from his relational works: Toxic Vibes, Guard Your Energy, and Twin Flame Epic Journey Ascension.
You can have the most perfectly optimized action map. You can understand your bloodline assignment perfectly. But if your immediate environment is poisoned, the entire architecture just collapses.
Sir Grandstar places intense focus on identifying and severing soul ties.
Right, and in this framework, a soul tie is an invisible but highly tangible, energetic, emotional, or psychological tether to another human being.
When you maintain a connection with someone who operates from a place of toxic envy, profound negativity, or chaotic trauma, that tie acts as a literal siphon.
It drains the life force and focus required to execute your destiny.
It's the equivalent of trying to launch a rocket while someone is actively draining the fuel tank on the launch pad.
Exactly. You must reclaim your energetic sovereignty by ruthlessly auditing your inner circle and cutting the ties that drain you.
How does that connect to the broader battles we've discussed, though? Like, if I'm worried about systemic racism in the justice system, why does it matter if my friend group is a little toxic?
Because of the sheer scale of the war you are fighting. If you are engaged in bloodline warfare, attempting to break multi-generational curses, and you are trying to navigate the rings of injustice, you are fighting massive, deeply entrenched systems.
Right.
You cannot fight the shadow courts in public if your own home, your own inner circle, is an energetic war zone. You will lack the stamina.
That is profound. Energetic sovereignty isn't just about self-care, it is a tactical military requirement for legacy building.
Yes, and the ultimate shield he presents against this toxicity is the divine blueprint for marriage and the twin flame covenant.
He positions the twin flame not merely as a romantic ideal, but as an energetic amplifier.
When you align your energy daily with a partner who operates on your exact frequency of the soul, you create an impenetrable safe harbor. You awaken divine love, align your chakras, and literally double your capacity to impact the world.
But the text makes a crucial point for the listener regarding this journey. It says, your twin flame journey is as much about your inner awakening as it is about external connection.
You cannot demand a high-frequency partner if you are operating at a low frequency.
You have to heal your 6 identities, break your generational altars, and execute your daily microactions. Then and only then do you naturally resonate at a frequency that attracts your true counterpart.
It is the final piece that locks the entire ecosystem of human ascension together. From the geopolitical economics of the diaspora blueprint, down to the spiritual trenches of bloodline warfare, through the systemic realities of the shadow courts, driven by the daily mechanics of the MVP Platinum system, and protected by the intimate energy of the Twin Flame Covenant.
It truly is an elite intellectual achievement. Sir Grandstar hasn't just written a collection of books. He has engineered a unified, multidimensional architecture for reclaiming human dignity, power, and eternal legacy.
The mandate he leaves the reader with is absolute. Knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is a legacy. You cannot simply consume this framework as intellectual entertainment.
No, you must use it to recognize what forces have historically shaped you and make the conscious, strategic decision about what will shape your lineage moving forward.
You are the destiny architect now.
So if you are listening to this right now, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to explore long after this audio ends. Think back to the Spagnoletti family, building their musical dynasty in a hostile new world. Think about the fact that your life is a masterpiece currently in progress, and your actions today will echo into centuries you will never see. What specific silent altar in your bloodline, or what invisible ring of systemic limitation are you going to actively begin dismantling today, using just one micro-action so that your great-grandchildren never even have to know it existed?